stop right there.
Don't mind me.
Everything continues in Chapter 3. Peter is in class, trying to get Nico's attention. Since Nico isn't responding, Peter asks another student to help, but the student is uninterested and dismisses him, pointing out that they don't even know each other. In an awkward attempt to salvage the situation, Peter quickly introduces himself, but before the conversation can go any further, the teacher interrupts, clearly unimpressed. Miss Anand scolds Peter for distracting others, reminding him that good grades don't excuse bad behavior. She hints at a past incident, leaving Peter confused and curious about what she means. The coach reluctantly tells Lonnie he's being cut from the football team for missing practice, despite his potential for a memorable season. The coach extends a hand in a gesture of respect, but Lonnie ignores it and walks away. Lonnie walks through the hallway when Pearl confronts him, questioning his decision to leave the team. She expresses frustration over his lack of communication, believing she deserves an explanation. Lonnie explains he had to prioritize his family over everything else. Pearl tries to understand, urging him to talk and let her help, but Lonnie insists there's nothing she can do. He admits he's been burdened by others' expectations and feels relief now that he no longer has to meet them. Pearl desperately calls after him, but Lonnie walks away, seemingly resolute in his choice. Peter checks in with Nico, worried that she's mad at him for ignoring him in class, but she explains that she's just focused on studying for a big test. Peter then admits feeling guilty for inviting Harry to the movie without discussing it with Nico first, but she reassures him that it's not a big deal. Peter invites both of them to hang out at his house that night, but Nico hesitates, mentioning that she doesn't really want to spend more time with Harry, especially after seeing his latest post promoting luxury water. Peter argues that spending time together will help them bond, using his own logic to suggest that if he and Nico are friends, and he and Harry are friends, then Nico and Harry should be friends too. Nico jokingly agrees to come over to avoid Peter's algebra, and they all laugh, with Peter excited about the prospect of a good time. In class, Peter notices that Lonnie is absent again, and the teacher assigns him to partner with Pearl and Neville for their lab work. Peter tries to break the ice with Pearl, joking about being a team now, but he quickly shifts to asking about Lonnie, clearly concerned. Pearl brushes off his worries, telling him to forget about Lonnie and focus on the work. Lonnie arrives home, where his dad greets him, surprised by his early return. They briefly talk about his canceled practice, and his dad asks him to take off his shoes. Inside, Dre expresses frustration, feeling overshadowed by Lonnie's actions. Lonnie defends his decision to lie, while Dre reveals his own struggles, blaming Lonnie for taking away his sense of identity. Despite their tension, Lonnie insists it's too late to change things. Dre warns that Lonnie can't hide forever, especially when graduation approaches, and Lonnie, frustrated, walks away saying he's leaving to avoid Dre. Peter and Harry discuss their plans for the night, with Harry worried he'll be a third wheel between Peter and Nico. Peter reassures him, promising to keep everyone having fun. Norman Osborn enters, dressed impeccably for a charity dinner, and warns Peter not to have too much fun. After some light banter, Harry grabs his bag to head out. Meanwhile, Peter encounters Jean, who questions his presence on the restricted floor. Peter explains his special access, and Jean leaves. Harry asks Peter if he's ready to go. At Peter's apartment, Aunt May sets up snacks and a VCR for a movie night, warning the guys about the R-rated films. She leaves for a party, telling Peter to be safe. Harry tries the food and mistakes raisins for caviar, prompting Nico to correct him. The group shares a moment about their families, with Peter revealing his mom passed away and Nico lives with a foster family. Peter suggests watching an old movie, and they argue over which film to pick. They settle on Predator. During the movie, Peter gets distracted by a message from Dr. Connors. When Harry notices, Peter insists he's focused on enjoying the night with his friends.
Tonight, I'm hanging with you guys.
At a charity conference, the speaker acknowledges Lagos's tragic events and thanks top donors, including Norman Osborn. As Norman moves through the event, he meets Secretary Ross, who boasts that the Sokovia Accords will reduce reliance on private donors. Norman subtly questions the search for Steve Rogers, but Ross dismisses him. Offering Oscorp's assistance in tracking rogue Avengers, Norman presents classified data on SpiderMan. To mislead Ross, he falsely identifies John Gallo as SpiderMan. Ross agrees to keep the information quiet in exchange for Norman's cooperation. Just then, an alarm notification appears on Norman's tablet, prompting Ross to remark on Oscorp's need for better security. Norman assures him he'll handle it. Peter, Nico, and Harry are in the middle of a chaotic multi-board game night when Harry gets a call from Norman. Norman informs Peter of a security breach at Oscorp Tower and insists he investigate. Peter hesitates, reminding Norman that this was supposed to be a night off, but Norman insists it's urgent. Peter reluctantly agrees. Trying to cover up his sudden departure, Peter claims Norman was asking for branding advice, suggesting the name Osmart instead of Oscorp. Harry jokes that Norman must be drunk from the charity event. As the group rewinds the movie, Peter pretends to go on a soda run to sneak out. Nico and Harry offer to join him, but Peter insists they stay behind to watch the apartment. Lonnie leaves a store and spots a car. The driver, a Scorpion gang lieutenant, reveals herself, making Lonnie panic and run. She chases him, but his gang friends arrive just in time. Undeterred, she follows them. At Oscorp, Spider-Man finds the security guards unconscious. Meanwhile, back at Peter's apartment, Harry and Nico sit in awkward silence before bonding over tarot and crystals. Nico offers to give Harry a reading, and he eagerly agrees. At Oscorp, Peter quickly types on a computer. As he works, he notices a shadow moving in the dimly lit room. Instinctively, he swings up to the ceiling and prepares to confront the intruder. Emerging from the darkness is Daredevil, calm and composed, seemingly unfazed by Spider-Man's presence. Peter tries to trap him with his webs, but Daredevil effortlessly dodges each shot, his reflexes and agility far superior to what Peter expected. A fight breaks out, with Spider-Man launching quick strikes, but Daredevil counters every move with precision. Peter finds himself repeatedly thrown or deflected, struggling to gain the upper hand. As they exchange blows high above the city's skyline, Peter can't help but admire the fight, quipping about how it ranks among his best battles. Daredevil, however, remains focused, moving with calculated efficiency. While Spider-Man starts dodging more effectively, Daredevil remains unimpressed, noting Peter's inexperience. Between attacks, Daredevil cryptically warns Peter that Norman Osborn is hiding something, hinting that things at Oscorp aren't as they seem. Peter, unconvinced, points out the irony of taking a moral lecture from someone in a devil costume. Then, in a split-second move, Daredevil hurls his billy club. The weapon ricochets perfectly off the environment, striking Spider-Man and knocking him out cold.
Sweet dreams, kid.
In the apartment, Nico reads Harry's tarot cards, explaining that the devil represents inner struggles. Harry, misunderstanding, flips another card as if playing a matching game, revealing he only sees tarot as a fashion statement, not something to believe in. Frustrated, Nico dismisses it. Sensing tension, Harry apologizes, admitting he struggles to make friends and feels lucky to have met Peter. Nico, still annoyed, reminds Harry that Peter is his best friend. Harry reassures him he's not trying to interfere, but acknowledges the strength of their bond. As they talk, Harry probes deeper, hinting at Peter's secret. Nico, unfazed, responds cryptically, refusing to confirm anything.
You'll have to be more specific.
Spider-Man regains consciousness as Gallo connects Norman Osborn to him. Norman demands a status report, which Peter initially doesn't understand. He then explains that there was a break-in by a masked man dressed like a devil, who accused Norman of hiding something.
He said you were hiding something.
Norman, alarmed, orders Peter to stay put, saying they'll discuss everything in person. Peter hesitates, worried about Nico and Harry waiting for him, but before he can argue, Norman overrides him, pulling him into Oscorp's garage and insisting he wait. In Norman Osborn's office, Peter and Norman discuss the recent incident. Norman reveals that he has been researching the technology used by the criminals Peter has encountered. He suspects that Otto Octavius, a gifted scientist once at Oscorp, is behind the thefts. Otto, driven by arrogance and jealousy, stole their work on a modular smart alloy, which could have revolutionized military technology. Norman explains that Otto is repurposing the tech for his own purposes, making criminals into enhanced weapons. Peter questions whether Otto is working with the devil-like thief he encountered, describing him as more skilled and professional than the usual crooks. Norman agrees, saying Otto must have hired someone reliable due to the severity of his situation. They discuss tracking Otto down through the tech he's modified, though it will take time. Peter, realizing he needs to check on his friends, excuses himself and leaves quickly. Peter returns to the apartment, explaining he couldn't get soda but brought ice instead. Nico expresses disappointment about the soda shortage and jokingly wonders if Spider-Man could help. Peter, surprised, tries to deny it. Nico then hints that Harry had mentioned something about Peter's secret identity. Peter, feeling exposed, accidentally drops his suit, revealing his Spider-Man sketches and mask. Nico, upset, leaves the apartment crying.
I thought she knew.
At the gang's hideout, Don reassures Lonnie that Camilla hasn't made any more moves against them, suggesting she might just be trying to scare him. He offers Lonnie to stay the night at the hideout for safety. Lonnie thanks Don, feeling reassured. Camilla confirms that the plan worked, revealing she has successfully tracked the gang to their hideout. Meanwhile, Gargan, now equipped with a scorpion tail installed by Octavius,
Let me just say, you're gorgeous.
At school, Peter desperately tries to catch up with Nico but fails. Pearl asks him about his fight with Nico, and Peter admits he messed up and doesn't know how to fix it. They talk about Lonnie, and Peter expresses concern about his absence from school. Pearl reveals Lonnie is ignoring her, and she feels hurt because he won't open up to her. Peter offers advice, saying people sometimes keep things from those they care about to protect them. But Pearl disagrees, saying she decides what she can handle. Peter reassures her she can talk to him anytime. As Peter leaves for his internship, Pearl receives a message from Lonnie's brother, asking if she can talk. Lonnie, frustrated and anxious, scrolls through his phone and demands to know how the gang can remain so calm with the scorpions chasing them. Don reassures him that they're prepared for any confrontation, referencing past encounters. Lonnie then talks to his mom, who worries when she notices he's not home, but he lies, saying he spent the night at Mike's for tutoring. She expresses concern about Dre returning, but Lonnie downplays it, assuring her he's in control. After the call, the gang mocks him for saying, "I love you too," and jokes about his mom's concern. Don assures Lonnie that he's part of the gang now, and that they'll protect their territory. At Oscorp, Norman Osborn activates a holographic map and explains to Peter how they're tracking Otto Octavius using the energy left behind by his weapons. They discuss various elements, and Peter suggests a lead polyethylene boron composite, which Norman agrees with. Norman reveals Otto had wanted to experiment with gamma radiation, and despite the dangers, he wanted to push its limits. The conversation is interrupted by an alarm, signaling a new piece of Octavius's tech, causing chaos on East 42nd Street. Peter is ready to suit up and pursue the threat, but Norman tells him they'll handle it without involving Harry, who is dealing with personal matters. Harry nervously stands outside Nico's house, unsure of how to approach her. After pacing and overthinking, he's greeted by Nico's foster parent, who notices his presence. Harry confirms he's at the right place and is invited inside. Nico comes out, and Harry awkwardly starts talking, fumbling with his words. After some back and forth, he finally asks if they can talk, and Nico agrees, but with a condition. He's paying for the food, and she warns him she eats a lot. At a parking lot, Harry and Nico sit eating pizza, where Harry tries to mend the tension between Nico and Peter. He admits that he shouldn't have shared Peter's secret and wants to make things right. Nico, however, is upset and frustrated, feeling abandoned by Peter as he pursued his superhero duties without including her. She accuses both Harry and Peter of moving on without her.
Do you hate the idea of him being a hero that much?
It's not about him being a hero. It's about him moving on and leaving me behind.
While Harry tries to explain that Peter didn't intend to hurt her and that he just wants to help people. Despite their heated conversation, Nico softens at the mention of Harry's offer to teach her how to drive his car. She's initially skeptical, but agrees to give it a shot, showing that there's still some hope for them to reconnect. As Spider-Man swings through the city, the police radio crackles with an urgent request for backup after multiple explosions on East 42nd Street. Norman Osborn, still in communication with Peter, asks if he's made any progress in locating Octavius. Norman suggests syncing the spectrometer with Peter's suit to track the energy output, now with a beacon to guide him toward Octavius's whereabouts. As Nico gets behind the wheel of Harry's car, the tension builds when a racer challenges them. Nico, with some sarcasm, accepts the challenge, leading to an impromptu street race with Clev live-streaming the event. Despite her inexperience, Nico's determination pushes her forward, and she nearly crashes before her necklace seems to give her a mysterious boost. Harry urges her to activate the car's track mode, which makes it shoot forward, leaving the rival racer in the dust. Once the race ends, Harry is pumped and impressed, but Nico apologizes for pushing the limits with his car. Harry, in a mix of admiration and disbelief, laughs it off, but swears she's never driving his car again. However, their celebration is short-lived as a civilian spots them, and Harry quickly changes his mind, urging Nico to drive off. Lonnie is surprised when his girlfriend, Pearl, visits him at the gang's headquarters. She expresses disbelief at him being involved with the gang, revealing that his brother and Dre are concerned for him. Pearl urges him to leave the dangerous world of the gang, offering help, but Lonnie refuses, insisting he doesn't need anyone's help. Pearl and Lonnie's conversation is interrupted when Scorpion, Gargan, bursts into the building. The gang fires at him, but he deflects the bullets with his tail and starts attacking, killing a gang member. He mocks the gang for being unprepared, using his tail to toss people around and make his way toward Don. Lonnie tells Pearl to stay put. Don tries to shoot Gargan, but Gargan lifts him with his tail and squeezes him. Lonnie attempts to intervene but is knocked down. Gargan grabs Lonnie by the neck, preparing to set an example and punish him for trying to play hero.
Let's see what happens when you try to play hero.
Mind if I give it a try?
Spider-Man enters the fight and saves Lonnie, confused by his and Pearl's presence. After briefly checking on Pearl, Spider-Man tells them to leave. Gargan throws a flying attack, which Spider-Man catches and throws back. He then urges Pearl and Lonnie to run. Spider-Man comments on Gargan's tail, dodging an attack and remarking that he shouldn't have underestimated it. Nico and Harry return to her place after the race. Nico admits she's not ready for NASCAR, but considers her driving a success. Harry jokes about her future in Fast and Furious, and they share a good time getting to know each other. As Harry leaves, Nico apologizes for judging him and admits he's not as bad as she thought. They agree they're good, but Nico's still upset with Peter for keeping secrets. Harry explains Peter's intent to protect her and offers his friendship. Nico offers to give Harry a tarot reading, and they share a moment of awkwardness before fist bumping. Harry leaves, and they both walk away with satisfied expressions. Peter continues dodging Gargan's attacks, swinging and jumping to avoid his robotic scorpion tail. Gargan taunts him.
Don't tell me you're too afraid to fight a scorpion.
Scorpion? No. Psycho pretending to be a scorpion? Yes!
Gargan strikes Peter hard, breaking his mask lens and sending him crashing to the ground. Spidey struggles to web Gargan, but his tail breaks the webs. Osborn advises Peter to use his environment, so Spidey throws objects at Gargan and webs his face. After some struggle, he wraps Gargan completely in webs, rendering him immobile. Peter, running low on web fluid, tells Mr. Osborn he's out of webbing, but has successfully tied up the villain. He jokes about needing pest control for Gargan and prepares to head back. As Peter is about to leave, Gargan uses gamma radiation to tear through the webs, burning himself in the process. Peter realizes Gargan's tail is overheating, but Gargan dismisses the pain. Peter calls for Osborn's advice, but Norman has turned off his communication. With no webs left, Peter tries dodging, but gets slammed side to side by Gargan's gamma-powered strikes. He holds onto Gargan's tail, but is thrown into a building pillar. Struggling to hold it up, he suddenly gets punctured in the chest. Norman, tracking Otto, gets an alert about Peter's vitals and warns that his suit shouldn't be penetrable. Peter pleads for help as Gargan pummels him, breaking his mask and nearly exposing his identity. Just as Gargan is about to finish Peter off, a flying broomstick crashes into him. He swings his tail aggressively, but Norman tells Peter to get on the broomstick. Peter quickly climbs on and escapes, leaving a furious Gargan behind. Peter hallucinates Scorpion relentlessly beating him, his mind foggy from the fight. Suddenly, he snaps back to consciousness, finding himself lying in a hospital bed, surrounded by doctors treating his injuries. His body aches, and his vision is blurry. As he tries to process what's happening, he hears Norman Osborn's voice, asking the doctors about his condition. Peter wakes up, disoriented but healed, in Oscorp's experimental medical wing. Norman Osborn reassures him that his identity is safe and that Aunt May believes he stayed at their place. Peter, still concerned about Scorpion, insists on stopping him, but Norman shifts the focus to Octavius, whom Peter helped locate. Peter is eager to fight, but Norman informs him that his suit is beyond repair. Peter offers to wear any backup design, but Norman insists he must rest. Frustrated, Peter questions if he's strong enough to stop his enemies. Norman tells him he's holding back and needs to embrace his true power to reach the next level. If he can't, their work together might end. As Peter processes this, Norman turns away and instructs an assistant to contact Secretary Ross, hinting at larger plans. As Peter sneaks out of the room, he carefully makes his way down the stairs, but stops abruptly when a loud scream echoes through the hallway. Rushing toward the noise, he bursts into a room to find Asha celebrating excitedly.
Too bad my ears don't anymore.
The experiment worked. The team, Jean, Connors, Amadeus, and Whitman, discusses the breakthrough, though Whitman remains unimpressed. Amadeus jokes about Peter's bruises, prompting Asha to demand an apology. Connors, noticing Peter's injuries, asks if he was mugged. Peter brushes it off, attributing it to bad timing. Apologizing for missing the demonstration, Peter explains he's been working on a special project for Osborn. Connors acknowledges Peter's contributions and assures him he's been invaluable. As Peter prepares to leave, he reflects on the weight of Osborn's expectations and his own doubts. Peter arrives home exhausted and tries to slip away to his room, but May immediately notices his injuries. Concerned, she questions him, but he deflects with a weak excuse about skateboarding. She doesn't buy it. Frustrated, May insists on honesty. If he's staying out all night and coming home hurt, she deserves the truth. Peter, overwhelmed, confesses his doubts and fears.
I keep screwing everything up, May.
He feels like he's letting people down, struggling under the weight of expectations. May reassures him, reminding him that fear isn't weakness. She opens up about her own fears after losing Ben, admitting she wished Peter had someone like him to talk to. Peter expresses his gratitude, and they share a heartfelt moment before May lightens the mood, joking about his supposed skateboarding skills. Peter plays along, promising to stay off the board. In his warehouse, Octavius is immersed in his work when a video call from his assistant, Vincent, interrupts him. Annoyed, he reminds Vincent not to disturb him during his brainstorming hours. Vincent, unfazed, casually checks in, suspecting Octavius is once again distracted by a game. Octavius dismisses the accusation, claiming he's merely farming XP while waiting for an exploit to be patched. More importantly, he boasts about securing a rare metal with endless scientific applications. Vincent, ever concerned, asks if he has eaten, offering to bring soup. Octavius brushes him off, unwilling to continue the conversation until Vincent has something useful to offer. Octavius is caught off guard as SWAT bursts in, accusing him of violating the Sokovia Accords for the illegal possession of gamma-powered weapons.
Otto Octavius, you're in violation of the Sokovia Accords for the illegal harboring and selling of gamma-powered weapons.
Calmly, Octavius raises his hands, but only to summon his robotic arms, which begin grabbing SWAT members one by one. The SWAT team attempts to shoot at the arms, but their efforts are futile. Smiling, Octavius continues packing his important materials while watching the chaos unfold. As the SWAT team struggles to contain the situation, Octavius demonstrates his power by firing back at them and using an electrified stun bomb to paralyze several officers. He taunts them, acknowledging their pain, but making it clear that he understands it all too well. With a flourish, Octavius grabs a stick and begins performing acrobatic tricks, mocking the SWAT team's futile attempts to stop him. One brave officer tries to take him down, but Octavius paralyzes him from behind, remarking sarcastically on the officer's brief act of courage. Octavius exits his lab and is immediately confronted by more SWAT agents and Agent Ross. They demand he stop, but Octavius brushes them off, noting his busy schedule. Just then, Iron Man arrives, making a sarcastic comment about Octavius being busted. Octavius acknowledges the appearance of the unexpected cavalry, and Iron Man, addressing Ross, appears ready for a showdown.
Ross? Stark?
Peter tosses and turns in his sleep, his nightmare unfolding in vivid flashes. Nico ignores him, and Norman's disappointed face looms over him, further heightening his guilt. He sees Lonnie and Pearl trapped by Scorpion's menacing tail, the deadly appendage squeezing around Lonnie's neck. Peter tries to reach them, but he's too late. He falls through the air, helpless, as his body crashes into the sharp point of Scorpion's tail. Peter, still shaken from his nightmare, tries to reach out to Nico, but the call goes straight to voicemail. He stumbles over his words, apologizing, trying to explain the guilt and confusion he's feeling, but doesn't know how to convey it properly. Just as he finishes, his phone rings again. This time it's Pearl. He quickly answers. He's reminded of an assignment for Mr. Taylor's class, and Pearl mentions Emma is running late. Peter apologizes and tells her he's on his way, before calling out to Aunt May, letting her know he's leaving. She responds with concern. Peter arrives at Pearl's house, apologizing for being late. She mentions Emma bailed on them, giving Peter credit just for showing up. Pearl notices Peter looks down and reassures him. Then they get to work on their science project. They talk about argon and other things like bracelets and the beach. Suddenly, the doorbell rings, and Pearl answers to find Lonnie standing there. He's concerned about how she's doing and apologizes for not being able to reach her. They talk briefly about Friday's incident with Gargan and the danger they were in. Pearl insists that if Lonnie goes back to the gang, she wants nothing to do with him, and he acknowledges it, saying goodbye. Peter stops Lonnie, pleading for him not to go back to the gang, but Lonnie brushes him off, explaining he's made mistakes for his family and doesn't have the luxury to focus on homework like Peter. He insists he has to do this, asking Peter not to get in his way. Peter, looking defeated, walks away with his head down, sadness in his expression. Peter returns home to an empty house, calling out for May. He finds a note in the fridge saying she's been called to work. In the kitchen, he spots a photo of him, May, and Ben. Staring at it, he remembers May's words about needing someone to trust, like she trusts him. Peter enters Norman Osborn's office, where Harry greets him with relief, but Norman dismisses him to talk privately with Peter. Norman questions Peter's concerns and gives him a blunt lesson on power and respect. Peter admits his confusion about being Spider-Man, especially after failing to prevent his friend from pursuing a dangerous path. Norman advises Peter to embrace his power and stop holding back, as others won't hesitate to use theirs. Before leaving for an errand, Norman invites Peter to stay and wait. Harry returns, curious about the conversation. In a dimly lit alley, tensions rise among gang members as Don insists he has a lead on Gargan's power source. A fight breaks out, but Lonnie quickly intervenes. Dmitri Smerdyakov arrives, his face concealed, and reveals that Mac Gargan's transformation was likely the work of a scientist named Octavius. Though skeptical, Don accepts the information, learning the location of Octavius's lab. As Dmitri departs, Don sees this as their chance to level the playing field. The gang, fueled by his words and Lonnie's encouragement, rallies together, chanting in unison, ready for war. In Oscorp's lab, Harry casually recounts how he patched things up with Nico, but Peter is distracted, still unsettled by his conversation with Norman Osborn. As he vents about the pressure Norman put on him, Harry offers a different perspective. Power and respect don't define Spider-Man. Peter does. Suddenly, a police alert blares through the room. A hijacking in Midtown. Peter tenses. He's ready to jump into action, but lacks a suit. With a grin, Harry reveals a surprise. A newly designed suit inspired by Peter's own sketches. Shocked but grateful, Peter barely has time to process before the alarm sounds again.
Go get him, Tiger.